If you're selling the poo out of birthday parties, then continue selling the poo out of birthday parties. Find a way to add more of those because that's what people want. How do I cut expenses? How do I make it so I can save money? There may be a number of things that you are spending money on that you don't use, that you can cut and or eliminate that will save you money in the long run. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cheer Biz Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are going to be talking about what expenses do I cut when times are tight. Now, the reason I am going into this episode is because I'm kind of here right now when it comes to my camp company. So I'm wrapping up my summer and I am settling my budget for camps. And I made the realization that I did not stay within my budget. There were a number of reasons for this. I have been at 3 new locations. None of my locations were like where I've consistently been. So that there were some unexpected expenses. There was more travel. I bought a ton of equipment outright to facilitate these new locations. I brought all of my staff on as actual employees, which means I was paying standard taxes. We had actually separated the businesses. So ODT and Dream Camps are no longer the same entity. So I had to get my own separate insurance, separate workers' comp, separate payroll processor, all of those things. So all of those expenses ended up just being outside of what I had anticipated and budgeted for. Ending the summer with still some looming like costs and things that I have to pay out and going, man, this is not going to be, even though it was my biggest summer ever, I spent too much on the front end and I'm now not going to be as profitable as I wanted to be leaving the summer. So I'm not coming here and saying my world is ending or anything like that, but it was an expensive mistake. Did I get a great product for it? Did I actually buy things? Were some of these things investments in the long-term future? Yes. But I, just like everyone, when I look at the bank account and I go, shoot, 1 + 1 is not equaling 3, which is what I wanted to have in the bank account as we ended the summer, knowing I still have these things to pay out, knowing I still have these coming payrolls and things like that. I wanted to be in a better position. And so it's really easy to look at that and go, okay, what do I do now? How do I cut expenses? How do I make it so I can save money? Where are some areas where I can trim the budget? I can lose some weight and I can then get closer to where I need to be. And that is a really easy mindset to get into. I've been in it as a gym owner. I've been in it as a camp owner. I've done it a number of different ways. I've been in it as just a person where I'm like, growing up, looking at my bank account and I'm in college going, man, I got to make rent, but I only have this much money in the bank. And, where do I cut my expenses? And so I kind of want to talk you through my thought process as I was assessing, what I should cut and what I should do moving forward in this kind of budgetary oopsie that is not the perfect situation for me. So number one is people would look at, well, what is your biggest expenses? Well, my biggest expenses for this would be the locations that I rent. And then my next biggest expense would be staff payroll, the incentives that I have. I take good care of my staff. They have retirement benefits. They don't have health insurance, but I have to pay workers' compensation insurance and all those other things. My staff travel. So I could certainly look at, okay, I've got these private camps going on. So where I typically put my staff is like an Airbnb. So they have a kitchen, they have a little bit of privacy. They're not in a hotel. They're not necessarily sharing a bedroom with another staff member. They have a little bit more comfort. So should I book them at a Motel 6? Should I fly them on Spirit Airlines or Frontier or one of those like really cheap discount airlines? Should I maybe stop doing the retirement contribution matching? What are these, where could I cut things? Maybe I even, don't pay quite as much per camp. Maybe I take off $100. And these are all like thoughts that will go through anyone's head. Now, just because I have a thought doesn't mean it's a good thought and doesn't mean it's going to be something I'm going to do, but are just things that I might kind of cycle through of like, okay, well, what would that look like? Well, let's say I do the hotel thing and I say, instead of staying at an Airbnb for $230 a night, we're going to stay at a Motel 6 for $99 a night. Well, one, I just refuse. I'm not going to put my staff in a Motel 6. I respect them more than that. I've responded to way too many things at a Motel 6 in my police career that I just don't want to do that to them. I know what happens at those places, and I just don't want to do that. So I won't book them there, even if it's going to save me money. It's the wrong thing to do. Even though I can save a little bit of cash, that $300 is not worth making my staff feel like I think they are worth a Motel 6. Now, I would say the same thing when it comes to payroll. So I've been in the position, and I'm telling you guys, when I run my camp payroll, I'm not running payroll for $5,000. Like, I ran a payroll this summer that was 60 grand. Not joking. Now, it was multiple camps that I was paying out for for lots of instructors, but there was a payroll that I ran that was over $60,000. And that's a lot of money. Now, when I looked at it and I went, okay, well, let's say, because I knew the budgetary issue, I knew about the budgetary issue before the summer even started, but it was, like, let's get through it and let's kind of see where we end up when we've done pro shop sales and all those other things, which actually was a good thing because it was not as bad as I was thinking it might be. So when I looked at that though, and I'm looking at the budget and I'm looking at payroll and I'm like, okay, well, let's say I pay everyone $100 less for each one of these camps. And I actually plugged it into the spreadsheet. I saved like, $6,000. Now, when you're going, wow, $6,000, that's a good amount of money. Yeah, sure it is. But if I'm saving $6,000 and I'm making my staff feel like they're lesser than, what is the long-term trickle down effect of this? How hard is it going to be for me to make up $6,000 versus find new amazing staff members to work for me? And so ultimately it isn't worth it. So the answer to this is learn and make better decisions on the front end. And what I mean by that is hey, there were a couple camps that I overstaffed. So fix that problem. Find the systems that are going to prevent us from overstaffing and spending on things we don't need to spend. Dial in our travel arrangements so we're not doing as many last minute bookings that cost us a little bit extra. Make sure that we dial in those systems for those payroll things so we're not overpaying for overstaffed things, or we're not failing to factor in things like taxes and retirement and stuff as we set our pricing. So learn from those mistakes and make them better in the future, better decisions on the front end. So at the end of the day, am I going to have big savings right now and fix my budgetary shortfall by, trimming things on the staff side? No, I'm not. That's not a solution to my problem. Can I make better decisions in the future? Yes, I can. But again, even those better decisions in the future doesn't mean treating my staff worse. It just means being smarter at how I am aligning things for my staff. Number 2 is I looked at whether or not I should continue paying for some personal development, business coaching that I am getting, like for me personally, not even counting the coaching that we get for Next Gen, where we go and work with professionals who help us continue to guide our business and provide better opportunities for our academy clients and trickle down that information to them. But I pay personally for a coach who is coaching me on, financial investments and expanding my portfolio and building my personal worth. And it's not cheap. The group that I am in is it's not a crazy expensive group, but it's certainly not a cheap group. It actually costs more than it costs for someone to be in the Next Gen Academy. I'm looking at that going, okay, well, maybe that's something that I need to trim, right? I need to maybe not do that right now, not have that coaching, not have that resource. And plus, I'm traveling a lot. I wasn't utilizing it as much. I wasn't doing the work that I was supposed to be doing. And therefore, I wasn't really seeing the return on it in the same way. I actually had this conversation with Tori and we discussed it. And I said, this is something that I've been thinking about. And her response was, well, if you haven't been doing the calls and you haven't been doing the work and you haven't been getting on the group calls and doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, but those people are where you want to be in terms of having some real estate, having those things that are passive income generating opportunities, building their personal wealth and their family's long-term wealth. If they have those things, then instead of cutting that expense, why don't you just actually do the work that you intended to do at the beginning? Why don't you get as much juice out of that as you possibly can, so it's worth spending the money on? And she's 100% right. Like, I should, if there is an investment to make, I should be making the investment in myself, my own personal knowledge, my own personal development, because that's something that no one can ever take away from me. The government can never take away my knowledge. No shutdown, no anything can take away the knowledge and resources that I have developed and I've gathered from other people over the years. I'm not smart because I'm smart and I just naturally knew these things. The things that I know because I went out and learned them and someone taught them to me. So they made me into the mind that I have now, and it's not even close to where it can be. So I don't ever want to stop investing in that. And once I do, and once it's like, being slightly out of shape and being like, well, I'm just not going to the gym, so I'll just cancel the membership. I'm not where I want to be from, my physical health perspective, but I'm not really using it. And so I should just cancel it. Well, that's never going to make it better. You're never going to get more in shape by working out less, right? So if I'm not continuing to invest in myself from a developmental perspective, losing those business coaches, then I'm really not making the right decision for my long-term growth. So ultimately, that wasn't an expense that I am cutting, even though it would have been the easiest one to cut, right? I'm just severing this. I know I'm going to be saving close to $1,000 a month, like easy expense to cut. But what is that savings going to potentially cost me in the long term when I could be learning things that are going to turn into hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in the future? The next thing I could look at cutting is marketing, advertising, those kind of spends, especially right now when I look at what I'm doing with my camps. Oh, well, I'm not running a summer camp for a year. So I could certainly not be paying for marketing, not be paying for advertising. Maybe I cancel my active campaign for a little while. Maybe I decrease the spend on my website. I don't have all the plugins and things like that I'm using, or I'd stop paying a marketer to generate content and do those things that are things that have bought back my time. But then when I really look at it, there are some strategies, certainly. Like maybe I don't have as much of a marketing spend. Maybe I'm not paying for as many paid advertisements, but I certainly can't completely eliminate that. I don't ever want to stop marketing and stop promoting and stop advertising for my company, because once I do that, I actually am going to feel that effect much later when it would generate additional revenue for me. So while it solves a very temporary problem of money is a little bit tight, I really want to be strategic about what I'm doing. And even if I am decreasing my paid marketing, I still can be taking advantage of all of the free opportunities, my Instagram, my Facebook, my TikTok, my social media, my free email marketing. All of those other things are things that I am going to be leveraging and engaging with, even when I'm decreasing my overall spend on expensive marketing. Maybe I reassess some of the things that I did over the year. There are certainly like sponsorship opportunities that I partook in as dream camps. One of those being I went out to the Top Gun showcase last year. Maybe that wasn't a good enough return on investment. So maybe I don't do that again this coming year. I sponsor our Oregon Coaches Association at the highest level. Do I get a big enough return on that? Those are all things that I need to look at as someone who is marketing and paying for marketing. What is my return on these things? Now, the flip side of that, though, is to, okay, well, how do I get a better return on that investment? Maybe I still do sponsor the Top Gun showcase, but instead of me going out there, I use one of my staff members who's located in Florida to be at that showcase and selling camps. And maybe I still sponsor Oregon, but maybe I don't do it at the level that I did. Or maybe I go to them and I say, hey, I need to get more for this sponsorship, and I squeeze more juice out of that. So the same thing can apply as a gym owner where I'm marketing on something. Let's say I pay to market in a business, with another business, I pay to put up advertisements in their business. And I go, well, maybe I'm not getting a good enough return on this. Well, maybe I go to them and I say, hey, look, I need a higher return. So I'm either going to pull my ad spend from you, or I need X, Y, and Z. I need you to be posting about me on social media once a month, or these are things that I need to get out of this deal. So there are a number of ways to look at getting a higher return on investment out of your marketing and advertising. And again, utilizing those free channels. I don't ever want to just stop doing it. And when I look at, especially like paying for a marketer, when I factor in my time and what my time is worth as a business owner and someone who needs to be driving the business forward, if I'm paying someone a certain number of dollars an hour, maybe it's minimum wage, maybe it's more than that. A real marketer, you're going to be paying more than that. But let's say I'm paying someone, $25 an hour to take care of scheduling all of my social media posts, and I'm paying them for 5 hours of work to schedule out the month, and then I'm paying them for a little bit more to schedule some emails and things. That's worth it. That I'm paying fractions of pennies on the dollar in terms of what I get for getting a new client. So one of the things that you might want to look at if you have never looked at it before, and I'll do a whole other episode on how you figure this out, but you need to know what your CAC is, or your cost of acquisition. I need to know what our client acquisition cost is, because I want to know, is it worth the money I'm spending? So if I run an advertisement and I go, okay, I ran an ad, I spent $200, I got 10 clients from my $200. And so my cost of acquisition for 10 clients was $200. So I divide that by 10. So it's $20 a client. I know each client is worth $119 a month. Is that worth it to me? Yeah, absolutely. If my return on ad spend is over $100, yeah, that's a good return. So we want to know what our CAC is. We want to know what our ROAS is. We want to know those things. And if you don't have the time to calculate it right now, don't stress out about that. But that is always something that I'm looking at as I'm determining whether or not I'm going to cut these costs. Because although I might look at a number and say, ooh, that looks expensive, right? If I'll go back to the Dream Camps as an example, with Dream Camps, I might look at a Google ad and say, yikes, I spent $1,000 this month on a Google advertisement. But then when I look at my conversions and I see that I got 6, 7, 8 conversions for my individual camps that are all worth $1,000, that's actually worth it. I made money on the advertisement significantly. So I can be more okay with that. So knowing what your ROAS is, knowing what your CAC is, knowing what your conversion rates are actually become really important as you make that assessment of whether or not you should be cutting certain marketing, advertising, and paid development. The next thing I want to look at is my general spend, right? So the best way to do this, here's my strategy, and it's boring and it can be stressful. But if you haven't done it recently, I think it's really good to do. Print up your bank statements from the last 3 months and go through those and look at all of the things that you are maybe paying for that you have forgotten that you're paying for and you don't use anymore. I.e., back in the day before Canva came out, Poster My Wall was like the thing, and you could have a paid subscription to Poster My Wall. Well, maybe you're still paying for Poster My Wall, but you do everything in Canva and you can cancel that subscription. Or maybe your kids have signed up for Apple subscriptions on the gym iPad that you didn't know about, and you're paying for all these different subscriptions that you can trim or you can cut. Do you really need a paid Spotify, paid Pandora, paid SoundCloud, paid this, paid that? Maybe you can reduce that and combine things into one. There may be a number of things that you are spending money on that you don't use, that you can cut and or eliminate, that will save you money in the long run. And I've generally found when you do this, if you do it monthly, you're not going to see new things very often. But when you don't do it regularly, if you do it, every 6 months or every three months or something like that, you do that kind of work, you're going to find that you're going to find some savings in there. You're going to find some spend. And that is something that I definitely want to be looking at. The other thing I want to be assessing is, am I spending money on unnecessary creature comforts, right? Am I spending money every month on Starbucks that I don't need to be spending money on? Am I spending money on upgraded flights? Am I spending money on bougie hotels? Am I spending money buying things that I don't need to buy? The cutest outfits or stuff like that. I want to live personally, frugally. Okay. I want to be a cash millionaire, but I want to look like I am a middle-class American. I don't have the need to look rich, feel rich, be rich. I think you want to be successful and you want to look like you are doing fine, because I think that looking impoverished is not necessarily a confidence inducing thing for clientele. But there's a balance, right? I don't need to be walking into the gym wearing my third watch of the week that costs $2,000, wearing my Louis Vuitton belt and with my Louis Vuitton wallet and all these other things, right? I want to be living frugally. So I want to look at my unnecessary spending, and that's things like Uber Eats or things like that you can probably reduce on. Now, am I going to tell you not to pay to have meals delivered? No, I'm not, actually. I think there is a really good argument for using apps and services like Instacart, like meal prep services, like those things, even though they can be expensive, if you are utilizing the time that it is saving you to generate you additional revenue. Now, if you're doing that simply to be lazy and you are spending all your time watching Netflix and doing things that aren't driving your business forward and building additional revenue, then I would tell you to save on those costs. Start making yourself your own meals, decrease your spend on those kind of things. One of the things I hear from clients somewhat frequently, not all the time, but I've definitely heard more than once, is clients will reach out and they'll say, hey, my CPA was going through my spending and they're telling me I need to cut expenses. And they suggested that I cut being a member of NextGen and having my NextGen coach. And this is one of those ones that kind of boils my blood a little bit, because CPAs are not business coaches, and there's a reason they're not business coaches. And one, I find it slightly offensive that a CPA is sitting there going, oh yeah, I want you to cut the person who's coaching you on how to grow your business and grow your revenue, but they're not sitting there telling you to cut them. Because ultimately, can you run a business without a CPA? Yes. Do I recommend it? No. I think it's really good to have a CPA, but oftentimes CPAs are pretty expensive for what they provide. Not all of them. We have some really great CPAs that we work with. Check out our preferred partner, Teresa Kolster. But if you have a CPA that is telling you to stop investing in your gyms and your own personal development as a business owner, then that CPA does not know what they're talking about, because there is nothing better than running a more efficient business. That is what is going to actually increase revenue. And you can really never cut your way to being profitable, in my opinion. Now, are there times where you need to cut costs and you need to pick the most reasonably priced thing? Yes. But there are very few incredibly wealthy people that will tell you that they got that way by cutting expenses. Ultimately, you have to bring in more revenue. So I know I said, what expenses do I cut when times are tight? And I really just told you only two things: unneeded spends, lavish lifestyle things, and subscriptions and things like that I'm just no longer using anymore. And I don't see myself using again. I think that's the big assessment too. Because if you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I subscribe to this thing and it actually is so much value and I really need to use it, then start freaking using it and see what that does. The real answer is, when I'm in a hole, is I need to sell more stuff. I need to get back on the horse. I need to get out there and I need to put my product out there. I need to remind people that I have services and I need to sell those services. So instead of sitting back here and cutting all of my expenses, I said, okay, well, it's time to send out some email blasts and remind people that we can provide choreography, we can provide year-round stunt clinics and tumbling clinics, we can do these things. And I've done the same thing in the gym. Okay, times are a little bit tight. You know what? It's time to do the enrollment booster. It's time to send the 6-word email. It's time to run a back to school special and get more people enrolling. It's time to do these things because I can put more money into the business a lot faster and I can see an immediate response, immediate cash flow, lifeblood infusion into my business. And I'm going to see the results of that significantly faster than just cutting an expense and saving a few $100s every single month. I would way rather, instead of saving a few $100s every single month to have a couple $1,000 savings at the end of the year, I would way rather just put $2,000 into the business this month and then replicate that and iterate that and get it to be 4,000 next and 6,000 next and continue to develop that, right? So I want to sell more things. And I know that that is an easy thing to sit back and be like, yeah, nice, cool recommendation, Dan. Obviously, sell more things and make more money. But you guys, it's that simple. It really is that simple. If you want to get out of that hole, then make more revenue and focus on that. Instead of focusing as the business owner on what does your tumbling technique look like, and are we going to score this on our jumps, or do we have enough elites in our routine, delegate that to somebody else and focus on building more revenue in your gym. Sell more birthday parties, sell more class memberships, sell more private lessons, get more people enrolling in a half season team. Find those options and get them going. Bring in more revenue. Ask for the sale. We oftentimes, as gym owners, we are like, well, I run a gym. Everyone knows who I am. And so people should be coming to me. We don't do the marketing. We don't do the advertising. We don't ask for the sale. And if we do it kind of. We're like, oh, I market. What do you do? Well, I post on Instagram. That's not really marketing. That's like one small thing. So we need to actually do the work. We need to find the things that are working, and then we need to double down on those things and get more of those things going. So if you launch some birthday parties and they sell out, then find a way to provide more birthday parties. Don't go, oh yeah, birthday party is sold out, but I need to start this ninja program because that's what the gym down the street has. If you're selling the poo out of birthday parties, then continue selling the poo out of birthday parties. Find a way to add more of those because that's what people want. Continue doubling down on the things that are working, and you will see that the money will flow with it. The revenue will flow with it. The growth will flow with it. Focus on the things that you can actually control and not developing the things that you hope for someday. So again, if money is tight, figure out a way to make more money as opposed to figure out a way to cut your way to making money. People very rarely get wealthy simply by saving. Saving is important. Being frugal is important to an extent. But even just putting money under your mattress, you're not going to get rich. If you have extra money, then you need to be investing that. And again, a whole nother episode, which I actually want to bring in someone for. So be on the lookout for that on how to save for retirement as a coach or as an owner, because I think that it's something that we too frequently ignore in our industry of how do we get to a point where we eventually can step back and not be in the gym working every day, coaching, tumbling, flipping bodies, tossing humans. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, it was a pleasure sitting down with you. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode.